Rick, can you hear me?
Yourself, kind of?
Okay.
Having trouble logging in. Can you
Nope.
hear me?
I can hear you, I can see you.
We will call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. We have some, oaths of office.
What you guys, if you want, guys and gals, if you want to stand up and read that out loud and get your signature.
One at a time, or we're doing them together, or how do you want to do it? I, Andrew Arnold, do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and discharge faithfully the duties of the mayor of the city of Janesville, to the best of my ability and judgment, so help me God.
I, Elizabeth Project, do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and to discharge faithfully the duties of City Council member of the City of Janesville to the best of my judgment and
I, Ivan Moss, do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and to discharge faithfully the duties of the City Council member of the City of Janesville to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
All right, thank you all.
Ivan, you want to sign that one and give it to me? Sign that one. Andrew, you got to sign mine?
Yeehaw, first official signature. Goes downhill from here.
Right?
No, it's all great.
Oh, yeah.
Smooth sailing, smooth sailing.
And then I put your guys' certificate of elections in front of you, so.
Thank you.
And one other item I was gonna point out, you see a blue booklet in front of you. Every time there is at least one new person on the city council beginning a new term, we put a little booklet together for everybody to review the different departments for the city and what we're working on. So that's just for your leisure reading whenever you have time.
Okay. Please stand for the pledge. Is there any changes or additions to the agenda?
I have none.
While we are waiting on the housing study guy, I think at this point we'll just move past it. If he comes, we'll fit him in here where it goes.
Okay, Erica, Tom isn't here quite yet, so we'll just move along, and then when he comes here, okay?
Motion to approve the agenda as written.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're gonna skip by the housing study, so we'll go right into the consent agenda.
All right, your consent agenda, you have the minutes from our last meeting that we met, which would have been December 12th, 2022. And then you have the payable budget report, and then you have two sets of payables. One is from December 27th, which would have been our other December council meeting that we did not have. And then the next set of payables would be for tonight, January 9th. Just a few things to point out in the December payables. We paid for Ivan's training for the league. Everything is pretty routine on here. We did have the annual payment to Janesville Matters for the projects that they work on throughout the summer. And then there were some tax abatement checks that were sent to 9 property owners for this year. Andrea, do you have anything else in the December?
I was just gonna mention the Bornicke construction for some of the dirt work out at the Elkie Park. That was it for... Yep. There was, another one to H&L Masabi. Those were some cutting edges for the street department. That was about $7,600 too.
Then the January payables, kind of the big chunk of the payables for tonight would be the various bond payments that we have this time of year. So there's about $375,000 going out to, make those payments. Okay.
All motions to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, you're right on time, you're up. How's that sound?
Erica Thomas here, so I'm gonna go back to that on the screen. Yeah, everybody, Tom from Stantec is here tonight. He did our housing study, completed our housing study for us. We worked with him quite a bit over the last several months, and he's here tonight to give the presentation. And Erica Brown is with the Minnesota Housing Partnership. She's on the corner of our monitor there. She's helping us. That agency is gonna be helping us with this as we move forward, so, thank you, Tom. It's all you.
All right, thanks. Hope it didn't cause any panic. I came over from Wabasha, where I'm starting a housing study. Did a site tour over there. So I want to start by saying thanks, and it has been really a pleasure to work with folks here on trying to understand the housing stock here, trying to understand the housing need here, and think with you about how to meet some of your housing goals. And I met the mayor. Clinton has been very helpful. Marley has been very helpful. Erica has been helpful. So it's been a great experience. So I think some of you have seen the report. I don't think we're asking for an action of adopting the report. What I've been told is what you'd like to hear is some of the key findings, some of the observations we made, some of the insights we had. And I'm going to start with just reflecting back to you what let me introduce myself real briefly. So I'm one of the planners with Stantec based out of the Minneapolis office. I'm also an economic development specialist. I worked as a city planner for the city of Minneapolis for 15 years. I worked in support of developers, some of them housing developers, as part of my job. My responsibilities recently have been primarily about understanding for planning efforts and for other efforts the market context for development in a downtown, in a riverfront, in a city, in a neighborhood. And so to think about the opportunity for housing development, new housing development, or housing preservation is very comfortable for me. I work with a team at Stantec of people who are also do analytical work, also very sharp and experienced. So it was a couple of us that primarily worked on this. A couple of the key needs that were identified to us again and again were, one, that there's a real desire to live in Janesville. It's an attractive community. People want to live here. People like the schools. You've got a really great mix of amenities. But the housing is in short supply. Or it's getting out of reach from a cost perspective. So just to increase the supply of housing was one of the key messages we heard. A second message that we heard, and some of this came from the business community, some of it came from the schools, is attention to the mix of housing, so that it's meeting the needs of people in your community that are in all the walks of life in the community. It's really hard to hire for retail jobs or for starter school jobs if there isn't housing that those kind of occupations can afford. So to think about the balance of housing is something that we did a lot of. The housing study you have in front of you is basically has two parts to it. One is the analysis, you know, it's essentially observations about who the community is, what the housing stock looks like. That leads us to think a little bit about those needs. And the second part is a set of strategies that you can consider that we thought were particularly worthy of your consideration for meeting those two goals I talked about. Anytime I talk to a city about changing outcomes, it involves suggesting they think about things that may not be in their normal toolkit, may not even be in their comfort zone, but if cities don't consider things that maybe they haven't done before, they're not likely to see different outcomes than they've had before. So we are teeing up some strategies for your consideration that we're not pushing. We're just putting them on the table for your consideration and for you to think about whether that's a fit here. So with that big introduction, I'm going to start going through the slides. And I'm going to go, I'll try to go pretty quickly at times because I know you don't have all night. Go ahead, Clinton.
Right there?
Yeah, that's good. So the first thing we look at is what's driving the demand for housing, and so we look at it, has the population been growing? Has the job base been growing? The population here over the last decade has grown about 5%, so it's growing modestly. We know that there'd be demand for further growth if there were more housing options. Next slide. You can see, I'm going to focus you here a little bit. From 2010 to 2020 in particular, there's been a fair amount of job growth. And that surprised some people in our committee, so we dug in, and it's not all just in one sector, it's in a range of economic sectors, but there's been a good jump in job growth. So that's a driver of housing demand. Next slide, Clinton.
I'm just going to quit taking notes. Can't do both.
So this is a slide that shows on the right side, the right bubble, that the bottom line here is that Janesville has more people living here and working outside of Janesville than it does having people come into Janesville to work. 1,077 people live in Janesville, work outside Janesville. 481 people live outside of Janesville and come to Janesville to work. So despite the fact that jobs have been growing, you still have more workers than jobs in Janesville. That's not a bad thing, it's just a characteristic of the community. In some respects, you're a little bit of a bedroom community to places like Mankato. Next slide. The demographics here are pretty interesting. I'm not going to ask you to decipher this slide, but what I'm just going to call out is there's a lot of children in Janesville. And the next slide so just to talk about how some of these slides work, again, you can look at the report in more detail, but this is Janesville population, broken into 5 slices, 0 to 18, children, 18 to 35, 35 to 55. So you can start to see, we have older workers, younger workers, children, seniors. So Janesville is characterized by having a lot of children. And the next slide does kind of the same thing. In each of these slides, we're comparing this from other locations. Eagle Lake, Madison Lake, Waterville, other cities near here, as well as the county, Waukegan County, and the state. So the big takeaway from this slide is this big blue arrow that says almost 40% of the households in Janesville are families with children. That's pretty unusual. You can see that for the state of Minnesota, about 30% of households are families with children. So you've got a lot of families with children. and it speaks well of your school district and just the personality of your community, that families want to live here. Next slide. In terms of income, again, we're comparing the same comparisons with a somewhat high-income city for people who live in Waukegan County. It's a little below average in income from the state average. Next slide. Housing occupancy, Janesville's a little bit of an outlier again, but unusual, in that almost 90% of people that live in Janesville own their home. Just over 10% are rented. Next slide. This is a slide that came from Erica, and the point of the slide is to think on a household level, how many households are struggling from an income perspective, and there's a concept called housing cost burden that says that if you're paying, more than 30% of your household income on your housing costs, you're considered to be housing cost burden because that means a smaller share of your income to spend on everything else you need in life. So the blue bar tells us that for those homes that are owner-occupied and households in those homes that are making less than $50,000 a year, 46% of those households are paying more than 30% of their income on their housing stock. So in any community, whether it's an affluent community or a low-income community, there are some within your community that are struggling to make ends meet, and that's just one way of thinking about that. About 40% of renter-occupied households that are making less than $50,000 a year are housing costs. Next slide. We spent some time looking at your housing inventory. The colors don't show up on this. You've got a mix of existing housing, a lot of single-family homes, of course, but you've got twin homes, you've got townhomes, you have some fourplexes, a few apartment buildings, you've got mobile home park, which is, another housing type that meets some needs. You've got lower income housing development, you've got a nursing home, so that you have a wide range of housing types. Next slide. We called out the housing that is specifically designated for older folks. That includes a nursing home, it includes a newer assisted living facility. Go ahead, Quinn. And the next one, and actually, the Park Road Plaza Apartments is an affordable housing development that also tends to be occupied by seniors. And this map is intended to show larger multi-family apartment developments. So F&H Apartments, Janesville Apartments, and again, the mobile home park shows up on here.
So there was only one of those complexes that was designated affordable housing?
In Janesville, yes. Yep.
Is there a reason Amberfield wasn't included there?
Maybe I just don't know about Amberfields.
Okay.
What's Amberfields?
It's those blue, see over
Right
on the
here.
left side, right there?
Right there.
That should be Amberfield there, right there, shouldn't it?
Well, are they apartments?
Yes.
But would it technically be designated?
They're rentals.
Are they? Oh, yeah.
I don't think they own them.
They're rentals.
Well-
They're rentals.
Well, Clinton can put that on our map.
Anyway, just something, yeah. It's,
Send us an email about that, we'll add to the map, thanks. Next slide.
See where this one, right? Yep.
Yeah. So this just shows the number of new housing units that have come online by year. You can see this kind of a steady flow. You have a big year for single-family homes in 2021, but this is kind of a steady flow, and maybe a little uptick in recent years. Go ahead, Quentin. This chart shows the sale price for single-family homes. It's another example of what you're probably aware of that housing, even existing housing, is getting more and more expensive. So in 2017, the average single-family sale price was $83 a square foot. 5 years later, 2022, the average single-family home sold for $139 a square foot. So I don't know what that math is. It's something like a 50 or 60% increase just in 5 years in terms of the housing value. Now, that's not all bad. If you're someone who owns that home, you're earning equity. But if someone's trying to buy into the community, it's harder. Next slide. We went out and thinking about attracting a mix of housing, we thought a lot about how to increase the flow of lower density homes in subdivisions, and we thought about how to attract apartment development in Janesville. So one thing we did is we looked in smaller communities in, 30-mile radius or something around Janesville, and identified a number of apartment buildings that have been built there. Also talked to some of those developers. Go ahead. Just to get information about how are those projects getting done. What would Janesville expect to have to do to attract a similar development here? And again, that's an important part of the mix, because there are young adults that might be more willing to come back to Janesville if there's an apartment development. There's seniors that would like to have less maintenance on their home and then free up a single-family home. So we would recommend that you attract 1 or 2 new apartment buildings. Just pause on here real quick. This just shows some people we talked to in terms of getting information from the developer community, from people who have done building in some of your subdivisions, as well as internal folks at Stantec and some people in some important housing organizations. Go ahead, Clinton. Now we get to the strategies part, and first this is just a summary slide, and it's just affirming some of the strengths that Janesville has in terms of its housing stock, and which we've talked a little bit about already. Some of the challenges is the homes are selling very quickly, so there's not a lot of homes on the market. These days, new housing production is occurring at a slower pace. Also, just in general in the industry, housing development is challenged by rising construction costs, rising interest rates, which makes it harder and harder to do some of these projects. So we're sort of pushing upwind on some of these goals. Go ahead, Clint. So we put just a set of strategies on the table for your consideration. One of them will relate to attracting apartment development. What does it take? One of them will relate to some things you might think about doing or continuing to do to continue the subdivision development, lower density housing development, and a few others here. I might not spend a lot of time on all of them. I think I have almost used up the time I was allotted. Go ahead, Clinton. So this is the strategy that's about what does it take to attract some apartment, market rate apartment rental development. And we talked to a couple of developers. Essentially, you want to identify developers that have figured it out, that understand that there's a deal that can be done in a smaller community like Janesville, and that have done some of these deals and also know how to work with a city like Janesville. So the typical format that people find that they're able to do is a lower density building that might be 3 stories. It's going to tend to be surface parked or garage parked rather than having underground parking. And they, as they do these developments in a community like Janesville, they are doing it as a public-private partnership. So to attract a new market rate apartment development, it's likely to require a tax increment financing for a period of time or some other development subsidy by the city, which means that part of the first stream of property tax payments goes towards paying back that capital cost, and after a period of time, those property tax revenues start to go to the city like they do. So you're not taking, with tax increment financing, you're not taking money from the budget that would go somewhere else. You're just dedicating a future tax revenue flow initially to the development before it goes to the city. Go ahead. We looked a little bit at, maybe to your question, Melissa, looked a little bit at what are some of the types of rent-restricted housing you might be able to attract, and the models for affordable housing that are most common are competitive on a statewide basis and are not likely to be able to occur in Janesville. But so the way that we think you can attend to this, if this is a value, is if you get a market rate apartment developer that wants to build in Janesville, to talk to them about dedicating a certain number of units that will be rent restricted and that will be set aside for people that are under a certain income. So that's one model. And another model is in your subdivision development to really target some of that mix, just more modest, to be more modest, that are more affordable to folks.
Essentially tap on the developer, basically to get them attracted to designate certain things to accommodate. Do that in the company I work for, and it's turned out really well. Sometimes the biggest battle that cities go over when we say affordable housing and low-income housing is people get scared about these potential things, but the background checks for each tenant is very thorough and rigorous, so it's probably worse than what we go through for our homes.
And now I have to ask who you work for.
Bel Air. So like when you had those names, I'm like, no, yeah.
All right, that's interesting, yeah. Yeah, they tend to be, an affordable housing development tends to be well-managed and attractive and indistinguishable from a market rate development. Go ahead. In terms of subdivision strategies, some of what you can do to attract builders to build more, Janesville has already done. Anytime you can front-load some of the expense for the streets and utilities and take that off a developer's shoulders, they've got to pay a lot higher interest rate on that than a city would have to pay, so it decreases the cost of the development. Even further on that spectrum, talked to, I think it was the community development director or city manager in Yoda, I think, and they had essentially built a development as a city-owned development, built the streets and utilities, funded it themselves through a capital fund, and then invited developers to it. So now the hurdle for developers on already platted lots and already serviced lots was again lower. So the flip side of that, so you can think about how far you want to go to increase builder interest. Let me say first, another incentive to taking on more of the role is that gives you a little more leverage to say what you want that mix to be. We want some patio homes. We want some modest homes. We want some executive homes, or whatever the case may be. It gives you a little more leverage in that. The flip side, as you probably know, is the city takes more of the risk when you front those costs. And if you head into an economic downturn, as you've had experience with, if you're financing it with a bond and you have interest payments to continue, that can put you, that can create a challenge. So that's a conversation we're teeing up for you to think about, what the value versus the risk. Go ahead. And then there's three preservation strategies. This first one, I just feel like it's important to talk about community culture. And you've got a single-family home stock that is built in a certain era, and a lot of it, in particular for households that don't have a lot of extra resources, a lot of it might start to be a little bit falling into disrepair. And so to develop a community spirit about supporting one another. And there are organizations that have programs like Aging in Place, home repair programs that you can invite to set up a base of operation here, and you can invite volunteers for that. There's just a community-based way you can help each other out and encourage people to think about that. Next. I care a lot about, and I know this isn't shared by everybody, but I care a lot about mobile home parks because for ownership housing, it's your most affordable housing. And also the folks that live there are oftentimes don't have a lot of leverage. So it's not uncommon these days for someone to come in and buy a mobile home park, jack up the rent for the lot, and where are they going to go? So we do put a case study on here, Zumbo Ridge, just outside of Rochester, where there's an organization that helps the occupants of mobile home parks to purchase that property and to set it up as a cooperative. So now prices are going to rise because maintenance costs rise, but they're not going to rise just because somebody needs to raise the rent. So that's one thing. I know that there's some other sensitivities around the mobile home park here, and so we're suggesting also some relationship building strategies that might try to understand more what's going on in that particular development. That's also in the plan. And then there's one more slide. The last slide is, for those of you that aren't familiar with land trust homes, this is a lower cost way of owning a home on a regular lot, a regular single family home on a regular lot, by the land trust owning the land. So when someone comes in to purchase that home, they're just purchasing the value of the house itself, and it's less expensive in that respect. When they go to sell their home, they won't make as much because they're not selling the whole property, they're just selling the structure itself. But they've gotten into an ownership situation at a little bit lower cost. Mankino's working really hard on a land trust model, so if this was of interest to you, you may be able to piggyback on what they're doing there, learn from them, and set up something similar here. So those are the strategies that we're encouraging you to think about. That's the work we've been doing.
With regard to your interest in the mobile home parks, suggestions for how you revitalize a park that units are all 30 years of age?
Yeah, the units themselves, the things I've said here don't relate to the units themselves. So, I think a lot of times folks that are in those units that are really falling into disrepair, it's clear that they just don't have the means to fix them up, so that it's a question of if there's an interest in providing some support for that. It might be matching funds. You may have matching fund programs already that you haven't tried to, or that you haven't marketed to those folks, or maybe that they're not even eligible for those. But I don't think there's a lot of shortcuts besides thinking about do we want to create some support for that? And it wouldn't have to be specifically for those owners. It could be more broad. It could be income qualified for those at income levels of a certain level, but if it covered those folks, that might be a way to get at it.
In your profession, what works best to revitalize that?
I'm kind of learning about that right now.
Right.
I've been, so I think I'm super interested in this acquisition and turning it over to a cooperative model. So I don't have any other ideas on that. Yeah.
Erica, you said you had connection issues. Can you hear us, or do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I can hear you all. I will add one thing, that we do, I think I heard comments about practices and developing a resident-owned community or revitalizing it. I will say we have a workshop coming up for the housing team that, Clinton and there's a handful of other folks are participating in, and there is some
Erica, I just discovered
Yep.
two more,
Okay, so we can
oh, sorry.
follow up with them.
And will this be Wednesday's meeting?
This will not be Wednesday's meeting, this will be at the Housing Institute, that's
Oh,
on
okay.
February 1st and 2nd.
Yep, Rochester.
So they will be there, but we will have a meeting this week to kind of follow up on some of the
Yep.
conversations from tonight. So if you have any comments you would like that group to talk about or work on, please make sure that you mention that.
Sure.
Eric, I just discovered in an article two more mobile home parks that have been converted to cooperatives in the Twin Cities, one in Columbia Heights and one in Richfield.
Yeah, it's becoming very popular now, so
Yeah.
there are some Minnesota-specific organizations that are available to support that work if it is of interest. Unfortunately, though, it is mostly related to the ownership structure of the land itself and not necessarily revitalizing the mobile homes. I have more comments around what funding can be used for that, if that is something that the city wants to pursue in the future, but, because there are some programs at the state level that don't support rehab of older mobile homes, as you might imagine, kind of throw in good money after something that is, deteriorating at a faster rate, but that being said, there are a lot of, opportunities and examples in nearby communities, so.
Okay.
You pointed out a lot of ways that we could proceed from here. Are there any, things that might lead to a pitfall if, we'd proceed down a different avenue? Something we should be looking to avoid in the future? I'm new here, so I gotta ask all the questions.
And I'm wondering if there's something in your mind.
No,
that you-
no.
No, it's pretty empty.
Thank you, Jim.
First shot of the day.
Yeah,
Kinda slow, Jim, that took you 39 minutes.
Getting pretty serious here.
I think you avoid pitfalls when you build relationships and have a lot of conversations and you talk to other communities that have done things similar to what you're interested in. This is sort of all over the map. It's kind of scattershot. But if you may want to take on one or two at a time, identify communities that have done something similar, talk to them, ask them in that particular strategy,
Sure.
what did you run into? What were some of the pitfalls you ran into? Build relationships, learn from others.
Could we put together some sort of like a formal board or like a group of people to look at some of these avenues and see if it's something that we could pursue? Because I love this study that you did. I think it's fantastic, and it recognizes a very real thing that a lot of cities overlook, especially when you get higher up, right? When you get into these elected roles, sometimes you forget that side of the city that you represent. The
Sure.
people that can't always pay the bill, that can't pay the rent, that can't get in. So I'm really going to be so sad if all of that time you spent on it just falls by the wayside after the next meeting comes and goes, and this is nothing. That's what I really don't want to happen here.
Yeah, and I think you also already have some,
Yep.
so I'll let you or Erica talk to that.
I'm gonna answer your answer in two parts.
Great.
So we received a grant to help fund this study. The Minnesota Housing Partnership gave us a grant. So as part of that requirement is that we enrolled in their institute, so that we're going to Rochester, referencing that. We have a group from Janesville that go work with Minnesota Housing Partnership staff,
Oh, it's Southwest?
and we work on these things. There's also a local
Not
group.
Southwest Housing
Oh.
Partnership.
Minnesota Housing Partnership.
And then the second part of my answer is we do have a local team that we have EDA, Planning Commission, Park Row Plaza, staff, we're all part of.
Focus specifically in on low and affordable housing.
Yep.
Those boards are very focused on about 1,500 things, right? I want to make sure that when you go, there's something in place to addressing this.
Yep.
That's my biggest fear.
So now, Erica, our main goal here with our Janesville group is that we're gonna have to somewhat quickly come up with 5 or 6 or 7 options to really start digging into. I think that's
Can
what you're talking
Melissa
Yeah.
plug into that group?
Absolutely,
Yeah, I
sure.
would love to.
Comment on that, I would expect sometime between now and summer that the board, that the council would have a work session of some sort, going over the options, looking at possible alternatives, and come up with some recommendations for the civil to bring to a regular meeting. That's what I would suspect. I can't think that was
It'll be a little
originally...
later in the year than summer, by the time the housing partnership is actually over.
Because October, I think this
It
was
was an
an
18-month
18-month
course,
thing that
yes.
we were looking at, that would be like October,
Yes.
November, this coming fall. So I'm thinking that, yeah, by midsummer, by early summer, I'm hoping that we can have a work session as a council. That's the thought process I've got.
You're smiling, Erica, that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, that's, I was just gonna say that, the goal, I think, for us is to take the work that Tom did at Senior Tech and, determine feasibility and funding strategies.
G's?
And bring some meat back to you guys, so you can, talk about it and provide some direction for our group. So that's the goal, moving forward, is to take this and do something with it, not just let it sit on the shelf.
Right, exactly.
Do we have any questions or comments from the crowd before we let Tom and Erica go?
I think she stole my thunder, so
What?
I'm concerned as well to
Yeah.
come up with a conclusion.
Erica, you can't see, we have 3 EDA members here tonight, too.
We have such fantastic speakers and studies done, and I've seen it happen a couple of times in my short time where that's that. You came, you went, and it bums me out. And so this one, I really don't want to let go because it's near and dear to my heart.
And part of how these things get implemented is by having people in the roles that you're in who really are champions for moving things forward, keeping the conversation going. So that's great.
Terry?
I think we too are interested in how this ties together with our need for daycare, with that for community, and building the people can gather and with our library, which we do, not just housing, but maybe housing with, apartment with amenities in it that would be the way.
Well played, Terry. I think that's an important issue that has to be brought up during our discussions of what we're gonna implement. I agree, we should address those at the same time. So it can be all wrapped into a good community plan, rather than just housing, and we should do it all together.
Encompass it all.
I agree.
Well, with the daycare shortage we have now, and we're looking to grow our city, I mean, that has to be,
Yeah, they have,
That has to
they have
be-
to go together.
It has to be.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, you sparked a lot of conversation. Great.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom, thank you very much, Erica. Thank you.
All right,
Certainly
great to be with
appreciate
you.
all the hard
Thanks.
work. All right. Thanks. Yeah, you wanna watch the rest of this incredibly awesome council meeting, or should I?
You can, if I'm the only one.
Okay, see you Wednesday.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any more comment on that before we move on?
That was fantastic.
I'm gonna have to look at my face and...
Public forum. Anyone here to speak through public forum tonight? Dan?
Okay, Dan Seist, 209 West 3rd Street here in Janesville. Last week, I've been here now 41 years as far as owning the bowling alley. And during that time, we've had quite a few different people involved in snow removal. Well, in the last few years now, snow removal on that street is, which I found out the other day, was considered business where I'm at. We've had trucks now that are parked on the west side, that the snow is 5 feet away from the curb on the west side by the clinic. I rely on street parking. I don't have a parking lot, so I rely on street parking. So does the library, the fire department. When they come in, they have to park there. The clinic. Like I say, the other day I took a picture of a truck whose back end was 4 feet into the road. And,
And school uses right in front of your business.
what's that?
People can have their kids from school use.
Right, yeah, they have that there too. And last year what happened, this year we got way more snow than we had last year. Last year, we had a truck back up by the library, and a woman, because it was so narrow in there, and it's even worse now, avoided the truck, drove on the sidewalk past two guys in front of the bowling alley, just missed them, because she had to avoid the pickup. So I'm curious who's responsible for, I was told that it was county, so does the county have to come and clean that out, or does the city do it like they do the other two blocks?
Yeah, no, I had spoken to you, Dan, and I said that the county plows that road, and then the city comes through after and tries to move snow curb to curb. You
Right.
came in Friday, and Joe's aware of the situation. I sent him the pictures Dan gave me. They were busy removing snow elsewhere Friday, but Joe is aware of it, so.
This has been an extraordinary year for snow, and
Well, I know, of
Somewhat,
it. Yeah, and they say it's
but
worse
we
this
are-
year than it was last year, and it was just lucky that the two guys, they weren't even paying attention, and that gal just missed them both was about a foot away from the door of the bowling alley. She drove on the sidewalk to avoid the truck and almost hit two bowlers.
That sounds like bad driving. I'm serious, she shouldn't have been trying to go
Well,
around.
yeah, you don't know how fast she was driving.
I don't think that was the city trouble, I think that was
Well, no, I'm not saying it
negligent
was.
driving.
I'm
That's-
just wanted,
But I would go with it.
what we got is a lot...
Odd parking.
Right,
Right.
and I've got a lot of people that have big pickups. Pickups are longer than, and like I say, the other day I showed Andrea there that he was, or she, I don't even know who it was, that was parked at the clinic, and the back tire of the pickup was actually in the roadway, and you could see the path of the vehicles going around. This morning, there were two vehicles parked in front of the clinic, but they parked the other way. They didn't want to park their back ends out, so they parked the other direction instead of diagonally. They parked, like, see, my side of the bowling alley, you park
Yeah.
one way, and it's diagonal on the other side. Well, this morning on the clinic side, they parked like they do at the other side, because they did not want to park with their back ends sticking out into the street. So,
I
that's,
was aware of it, and,
okay.
Yep.
And the other issue I just bringing up now, I've been hearing so much about how well the golf course has been doing now. After 20-some years of paying taxes to my house, my bowling alley, and as being a member of the golf, I'm just curious, when does the taxpayer start getting some discounts on stuff out there?
we did take away the levy, so if that's
That
not...
the levy doesn't help me.
Right. I mean, that's...
Well, no,
it does,
I'm
because
just
you pay
saying.
less tax now.
Huh?
It does, because that
It's
comes
less
out of
tax
the budget,
now?
right?
Okay.
They have a big, huge, like, bowl, 4 years ago, came up with a big bowl, and one of the biggest things, the biggest thing, was to do away with completely the levy, and so
Right.
that...
Well, what I have a problem with is being a tax golf course, is you're giving discounts to people who live 10, 15, 20 miles to come here. We don't get discounts, and we're paying taxes.
I would go to the next golf course meeting and...
Well, I've gone to quite a few, and I just keep being told that it's financially irresponsible to even give discounts to everybody. I'm just saying, if they're doing so well now, it's time to think about the taxpayers getting something out of it now, so. Okay?
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Anyone else for public forum? Okay, moving on. Notice of communications?
You have one notice of communication from Region 9. The Waseca County group that represents, on the Region 9 board, there is an opening. They were wondering if a city council member would like to meet on the Region 9 board representing smaller communities in Waseca County. Think about it, fight about it, argue about it, arm wrestle about it, whatever, and just let me know, and I'll get in touch with them if anybody's interested in that.
Okay. Council report?
I don't have anything.
Well, we had a utility board meeting this evening, and, I don't know, little update there. Getting bids on some different things on the substation work that needs to be done, early stages, as well as they're in the early stages of looking at acquiring territory from Xcel Energy for the possibility of the new houses down on the west end of town, which is, Nate's working with Xcel on it. Sounds like a headache, it's expensive, but it needs to be done, so we're working on that. Couple different options, and Nate's getting more information together for us.
Well, if you got Nate on it,
One question dealing
Yes.
with the utilities. If we expand, how much expansion can our system handle as far as,
Residential-wise, a lot.
okay, that's
This is what Nate has told me.
Right, good.
Commercial-wise, we're not necessarily set up the best for commercial expansion, but residential, Nate feels we're in good shape that way.
Oh, good.
I could see us maybe needing to put in a lift station, depending on
But not...
elevation and
Yeah, right, that's
stuff like that.
Relatively minor.
Right.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Did I answer that basically correctly? Okay. Andrea has a lot to do with the utility portion of it, so it's always nice to have her.
That was in the back of my mind when that I thought, well, we'll go to utilities then.
The EDA met last week. We changed, and Ben is the chair now for that, and, we, put the squeeze on Clinton to get Marley's position filled as quick as he can, and offered suggestions to help him along.
What are you doing Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30?
Me?
Never mind.
You don't want him in here all day, I can tell you that right now.
squeeze them harder.
We tried to give him some useful suggestions. Other than that, I don't think there was a lot that went on, really.
Well, he must have listened, 'cause he did tell me about that when I got back, so.
Okay.
He must have at least been listening to you, so.
I listened to you.
He heard it.
He heard it, we had a discussion about it Friday or
He did
something.
about it.
Yeah, yeah. That goddamn...
I've been sick, that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Administrator report, Clinton.
Let me squeeze it out right here. Okay, attached is a December reconciliation from the bank. You also have the cash balance and graphs from last Friday, the 6th. The golf course comparisons are there. Good news, on December 22nd, we received the second half of local government aid from the state. So that's exactly 50% of what they said they'd give us, so that's good. We did receive an insurance dividend from the League's Insurance Trust for property and casualty insurance. We got about $18,000 back. We usually do receive some sort of dividend based on the good practice and good history that we have here. So that's a good thing. Also attached a building permit report comparing the last 3 years. As you can see, 2022, we did have more permits than previous years. The valuation was down this year, though, compared to the year before, because the year before we had a lot of new homes. So that's basically what that is. In your packet here is the proposed schedule for the 2023 council meetings. And then finally, the membership drive at the clubhouse. We had that in December, and it was absolutely hugely successful, the best year ever. You have the figures in front of you of what the money and membership for that came in. Any questions?
Along with the city council schedule, I assume you're gonna throw together another schedule for department heads.
Yep,
See, we don't have one tonight, which is fine, we have plenty tonight.
Yep. Last year, we started the department visits in February, so I'm still penciling dates down.
Okay.
Yep.
On your building permits, do they keep track of if it was for a roof or a deck or anything like that?
We do here, because of the state reports that we need to submit, we have to categorize them. So, if you wanna come in someday, I can show you that spreadsheet.
And, I'll just add quickly here, if you didn't read the email that I sent out, but of the total deposits that we did get from the drive, so that's $64,770.50. So it's cash received in 2022, but it's deferred onto the 23 budget cycle. So you'll see those numbers on the 23 budget reports, not on the 22.
Because it's for 23 memberships.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Still read.
Sorry.
No department head tonight. Old business number one, cooperative construction agreement with the county.
Yeah, last November, the council adopted a resolution of support for the county to apply for a state grant to put a new walking path to Lakeview Park. It would be a city-county partnership. We have not heard yet if that grant has been received. We won't know. But the county does plan on doing that project anyway this summer, whether we get the grant or not. So attached is what is typical with county government. If they're doing a project where the city is working with them, we have an agreement in front of us that says what each party will do. The cost is estimated just over $100,000, and we have a 70-30 split, which means 30% of this cost would be the city. If we do not get the grant, I would suggest we use rescue plan money that we still have in our account for things such as this. The agreement here tonight is just it's a formality that I'm actually meeting with the highway engineer tomorrow, so Andy, if you and I can sign this tonight, I'll give it to him tomorrow, and then he'll bring it to the county board. And the county board will also approve it then.
So if we don't get the grant, we'll be on the hook for 30?
Yes.
Okay.
We are going, it sounds like the county's going through with that project. Regardless of the grant or not. Obviously, we're hoping for the grant, but
Right.
we'll see what
If the
happens.
grant doesn't come in, I'd suggest we use that $17,000 we got from dividends. We don't have that budgeted anywhere, and we can put that toward that.
We already dividended it out.
That gets put back into how we pay our property.
It refunds back into our insurance costs for each department. So we took that money, and each department got % of it back based on how much they pay in insurance each year.